The following program is a production of WXCL Television.
Facing the Mortgage Crisis, presented in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Good evening. With more than 200 families facing foreclosure in South Florida every day, the problem is real, and the chances are it's happening in your own neighborhood, maybe to you or somebody you know. So tonight we're going to give you some answers, and I welcome you to jot them down. We're going to give you websites and information that will be crucial to saving your home or the home of someone you really care about. Welcome, Joe Moyle. You're a financial educator with the Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Palm Beach and the Treasure Coast.
Correct.
Nice to see you.
Nice to be
here. And Bonnie Conrad, a housing director with the Housing Partnership, which has a myriad of programs, but the busy one these days is the foreclosure program that's helping a lot of people save their homes. So let's kind of start at the beginning, because both of you are immersed in this. You know, we hear a lot, you know, the 0% financing loans, the ease of getting a house that's more than you can afford, and certainly living in this beautiful area where there's so much new construction. You know, how, in your expert opinions, did this happen? Was it mainly greed and just wanting more than you can really afford, Joe?
I think that's a starting point. Yeah, I think there were, it's hard to put the blame on any one thing, obviously. Definitely greed played a big part into it, certainly. And
education, though, Bonnie, because that's your forte. Do some people just not realize that, you know, a person is a mortgage broker, they're making money on you. Yeah. So they're telling you something that you might not be educated enough to know is wrong.
And not asking questions. You know, I've always said if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And in many of these mortgages, it was. There were a lot of gimmicks to make the loan affordable for the first 6 months. But people didn't ask and others didn't tell. What happens when that goes away? What happens if housing values stop going up? And those were the two things that really triggered the crisis that we're in now.
But in your fields, would you have any idea that, you know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, all of our homes were worth sometimes $100,000, $200,000 more than they are today? Was there any indication? Were you kind of saying to people, oh, I don't know if this is going to last?
I saw actually, because I was working with first-time home buyers, I would hear at the height of the boom people tell me, oh, we're not checking credit for scores under 200,000. We don't care about the title loan. We're selling this, so we really don't need to. It's not the old days when your neighborhood bank who knew what you did and who you were gave you the loan. The person that was doing the loan was selling it to somebody else who was selling it to somebody else.
Right.
So the part of making sure people could afford it got lost on both sides, on both the side of the lender and on the side of the borrower.
And is it, Joe, just too easy to get credit? Well, not these days, but prior to these days you can't get it, but prior to.
Absolutely, I think it was. Before I got into what I'm doing now, I actually worked as a subprime lender. I used to underwrite mortgages.
You were the bad guy.
So yeah, maybe I was the bad guy back then. But yeah, credit was way too easy to get. I mean, even as an underwriter, a lot of times we would sit there and scratch our heads. We're actually going to make this loan.
If you have a feeling that says you can't afford it or somebody can't afford it,
right,
usually they can't.
And we talked about this because we're going to touch on foreclosures, but there are people who actually did follow the financial rules. They did act responsibly, but because of the market today, because of the economic situation, because of the subprime crisis, they are facing big troubles. Their market price of their home, their assessed value has fallen down. You know, their mortgage is now worth more than their home. You know, what is out there for those people that aren't quite to the foreclosure stage?
I think there's two things. If your mortgage payment is affordable and you can afford to make it and your home value has dropped, if you're not planning on moving, you can wait that out. The market does come back. Florida's a boom-bust economy, and that will happen. if your mortgage payment is not affordable, if you're paying more than a third of your mortgage, you're paying half, 60, 70%, and we've seen people doing that, then you can now request a loan modification, even if you've been really sucking in and working hard and making that payment. And I think that's good. So you're not just benefiting the people that haven't paid, you can get a benefit for people who have been paid.
Exactly, exactly. Joe, what are you getting calls about? Is there a tradition or an example you can say, well, this is what's happening out there?
I think a lot has to do with the reduced incomes. I mean, the people that are working now, I mean, even if you had a job for years, you might have had to take a pay cut. And of course, the unemployment as well. I mean, we are seeing a great deal of that. And that I think is a stepping stone to why they're calling us.
And the housing industry made a lot of jobs
Absolutely.
in South Florida, and so when the housing values went down, so did the incomes of a lot of hardworking people who were in that industry.
I didn't even think about that. You're right. It's all tied because construction certainly year-round because of the weather alone.
Construction, title companies, mortgage companies,
Oh, you're right.
Contractors,
People
all the
that
people
used
who
to work
supported
in the
them.
mortgage business.
Yeah, people who used to work in the mortgage business. Okay, so let's get real. I have several friends. I was telling Bonnie before we went on the air. They're hardworking, upper middle class people, and two of them are in foreclosure. What could they have done, or what programs are out there today, thanks to the government and the stimulus package, that can help other people from avoiding that situation?
Yeah, in early March, and there's a website, financialstability.gov, there was the Making Home Affordable program announced. And what that said is if you are in default, you haven't been paying your loan, or you are at serious risk of default, you're paying 50, 60, 70% of your income for that, then you can ask for a loan modification, meaning that you can ask for your interest rate to be reduced. Maybe the loan period can be extended. You've had a house for 5 years, you have 25 years left, but if you stretch those payments over 40 years, it brings it down to what can be affordable. There are a couple of things that you have to have. One, it has to be the home that you're living in. You can't do it for an investment property. And in order to do this, you need some source of income or employment, not unemployment. So, if you've had that lowered income, you may be able to lower your housing payment to the point that it would work.
But if I have lost my job through no fault of my own, through the economy's fault, and I'm a single mom, so I don't have a dual income, so those programs aren't going to work.
Or you've become recently single and
yes,
you've got half
or you've
an
become
income.
recently single, obviously because of everything going on. Am I just best to go into foreclosure and to wait it out, because there are so many homes in foreclosure? You're not going to lose your house in 30 days.
No, I mean, in that case, in that scenario, probably the best thing would be just to get rid of the home. I mean, and you don't want to go to that extent where they foreclose. I mean, put your home for sale. Some companies will work with you on short sales, in order to clear that up. I wouldn't necessarily recommend just walking away.
Really? Because it seems, no offense to your industries, but it seems it's the easiest answer. I tend to think, and I read the headlines as you do every day, that people are just saying, forget it, this is easy, too many people out there are doing it, it's never going to catch up with me. Can you set me straight? Is that a
And taking
myth?
the easy way is the way a lot of people got into this problem. If you're not talking with your lender, if you're not trying to negotiate something, they can actually come back at you for the difference between what your house sold for at foreclosure and what your mortgage was.
Really?
And maybe right now you
Yes.
don't have money, but you start over in 3 or 4 years and things are going good. You don't want somebody to come after you for that difference.
So 3 or 4 years down the road,
Yeah.
they can. It's a $200,000 difference. Let's throw that out.
They could come back at you for $2,000 plus interest.
Really?
Yes.
So see, that's, I think, some of the fallacies and that are out there, some of the myths, some of the hyperbole that's out there.